Welcome to Mission DeFi with Brad Nickel, where we explore projects in decentralized finance that are innovating and driving our mission of financial freedom forward. Thank you for listening. If you like what you hear, please subscribe, rate, and review Mission DeFi and spread the word by posting a tweet to the show. All opinions expressed by Brad Nickel or his guests are their opinions and do not reflect the opinions of Black Knox, Material Indicators, or any other affiliated organizations. You should not treat any opinion expressed by Brad Nickel or his guests as an inducement to make a particular investment, follow a particular strategy, or become involved with any project. A project being featured on the show is not an endorsement of that project in any way. This podcast is for informational purposes only. Now, here's Mission DeFi with Brad Nickel.
I'm excited today to have Uri Klarman from Bloxroute, who is building a really cool infrastructure piece for the DeFi ecosystem that I think has a ton of potential. And actually, I also have some selfish motivations on this one because it looks like it's something that could help me out a lot with a couple of projects. So Uri, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome from Evanston or Chicago area of Illinois. First, introduce yourself, tell us about your background and how you got into crypto and DeFi and this whole big mess.
Awesome. Hi, Brad. Thanks for having me. Okay, it's a long story, but it's a cool one, so we can dive into that.
Awesome.
So I'm originally from Israel. I used to be a software engineer after, having a bachelor's degree in computer science, and then realized that, actually being a software engineer for like a big company or something is kind of boring. And also you spend all your time from, early in the morning until late in the afternoon to like toward the evening. All you do is work. It's not even that exciting. So I decided to leave industry and just go to academia. So I developed applications and kind of like that. And I like studying a lot. And so I was well on my way to go to academia and be a professor. I started here at Northwestern University with my then advisor, now co-founder, Professor Kuzmanovic.
Nice.
And I am at heart a networking person. Okay. So like my PhD is in computer science, specifically the network layer. So networking is what we do.
Nice.
But during my PhD, if for people who are not very familiar with how academia works, in computer science, you spend a year working on one project, trying to create a paper for that. Then you send it to a conference and try to do something else. And then you have like a multiple project that you're kind of doing. And then we had a project, which we already wrote. We already did the entire thing. And we wrote a paper, and that paper always almost got into a really good conference. Then, but not like they asked for a few things. So we changed it a bit, sent it somewhere else. And again, almost got in. And it's very common in academia, right? Generally, papers take a few iterations. But we did that, and then we said, okay, that system that we built kind of like crawls the internet, go to website, and from these websites to other websites and index it, etc. And which is kind of like what Google is doing, like what search engines are doing.
Sure.
So Alex then had a thought, which is kind of like, let's spin it. Can we create a networking based blockchain kind of thing? So this is not what we do now at Bloxroute. This is kind of like how I got into crypto. So we took the project, we pivoted into what we call Webcoin, which is now like, it's a paper that got published. Basically how, instead of everybody just like hashing numbers, if they crawl the internet together and index it in order to produce blocks, you could compete with Google. So again, this is not like a real industry thing. It's a scientific thing and kind of like a proof of concept. But it was a really fun, cool thing to do.
It actually sounds like a great idea.
And I think like 2 years later, I saw like, this is like in 2017 or something, like I saw a project that does exactly that and like whatever.
Right.
But it got us to look into blockchain. Okay. And then we were thinking, okay, what's going to be the next thing that we want to do? And we kind of like look deeper into that. And me and Alex are slightly unique because I think we're the first networking people to really dive into the blockchain space. Okay, like crypto has like really deep roots in the cypherpunk movement, which is kind of like, okay, coming with like tons of great cryptographers. They're way better than me in cryptography. But you know how when you have like a hammer, then every problem is a nail? Then it's kind of like, well, we have a problem with blockchains, with scalability or whatnot. well, let's create a new protocol, which is ZK proof, like ZK knowledge proof. Let's solve it with some more cryptography.
Right.
And we came into it and we're like networking people. And we were like, listen, transactions and blocks take a lot of time to propagate. And this is kind of like, this eventually led to what we do now at Bloxroute. By the way, we're called Bloxroute because we route blocks and transactions. So we'll get to that. But we were looking at that and we said, if you're thinking about scalability, which is where we started, if you want to do very large blocks, you need them to propagate fast between validators or miners. So we're kind of like coming from that angle. And we built Bloxroute, which is an infrastructure which propagate blocks and transactions very, very fast, almost at the speed of light. So this is like the hard, like bread and butter of what we do. We send transactions around, so we reach everybody fast, and blocks propagate fast. And we had some thoughts how to monetize it, how it will be used in the context of scaling. But then in 2020, during the DeFi summer, we had like an oh shit moment where we kind of people started to trade and, you see a transaction and, price goes up. So you want to be the first to sell or buy. And we're like, wait, we enable our customers to see transaction faster and to see blocks faster, see opportunities, arbitrage, liquidity, whatever, and act on it, right? Send the transaction, reach fast the pools or the miners or the validators. And it's kind of like Flash Boys for DeFi. Okay, if you're familiar with Flash Boys, like it's a cool like book. It's a company called IEX. These are the guys who connected with optic fibers, Chicago and New York, right? And the idea, like, if you're 1 millisecond faster than everybody else, then, price crashes in New York. You're the first one to reach Chicago and sell there before everybody else. You make a killing, right? So it's kind of like that. It's not about objective speed. It's about subjective speed. So like, if you're faster than others, you make better trades. And it's slightly different, but slightly similar in crypto in DeFi. Okay. So it's kind of like we had this oh shit moment where we can enable traders and market makers and basically every DeFi actor to make better trades and, capture more opportunities by seeing information faster and sending faster. And our advantage, like we were building this for like 2.5 years before DeFi was DeFi. Okay. So like we had, it actually is quite hard and takes a lot of not only money, but time and effort to build a fast infrastructure which propagates information close to the speed of light, very reliable. It actually is hard. Regardless of how much money you pour into that, you actually have to work really hard to make it.
Sure.
So we were ahead of everybody else. And so we're connected to like 95% of the hash power in Ethereum. So directly connected to the mining pools. We're connected to like 70, 80% of the validators on Polygon, 50% of the BSC validators. Basically, all the big traders are using us, etc. But before stepping a bit into that, so this is kind of like stopping here for a second. This is how I got into crypto and DeFi. I meant to go to academia and kind of like be a professor, but then it was kind of like me and Alex and later Eyal, my COO and third co-founder, were like, wait, this is too good not to do. Okay, like this is not $1 million idea. This is not even $1 billion idea. These are many, many billions, but like we have to do this. So, finished my PhD, started Bloxroute, ended up like, okay, we're building Bloxroute and this is what I do now. So, I didn't end up going to academia.
Are there days when you wish you had?
No, my job is great. Again, like being like, I work hard, okay, but I enjoy it a lot. I enjoy explaining what it is that we do, etc. And it is actually my team that does all the hard work, right? It's kind of like we're coming up. Here are the stuff that we need to do. Okay, we need this and we need that. And here's how we're collaborating and expanding to Solana. We have a deal now that we're like working on with Serum there and enabling like trading, like more trading to happen on Solana. Blah, blah. And then somebody else have to like, solve all the nitty-gritty problems that arise when you do real world stuff. But that's not my job. A young COO, that's his job. He has to do all the hard work. I'm here to, I do the fun part. We come up with ideas together. We think about it. We create collaboration. But then, the actual work, people who are better developers than me, who are who are better like in so many ways. And like my team is better than me in so many ways. And so it's like they do the really hard part, I do the fun part. So no, I don't. There are hardly ever days I think that I can think of that like, oh, I should have gone to
Nice.
academia.
Very
But
nice.
but following up on the thread that we started with, I want to maybe take this opportunity and kind of like maybe explain to people out there. We talk about DeFi and we talk about CeFi, right? Centralized finance versus decentralized, or TradFi, traditional finance. And people have like a vague or intuitive understanding that they're similar but different. But one thing that I think we learned as we were doing it, okay, it wasn't clear to us from the start, but as we were learning, we saw, DeFi is getting very big, right? DeFi moved from 100 million yearly volume in 2019 to 1 trillion
Right.
volume in 2021. So it's getting big. And we're definitely seeing people taking pieces or primitives from traditional finance and reinventing them, rebuilding them, redesigning them in DeFi.
Sure.
But when you try to kind of like pinpoint what's the difference between DeFi and CeFi, there are 3 important attributes or properties which are different. 2 of them, or one is obvious, one is semi-obvious, and the third really isn't. And it's pretty cool. Okay. The obvious one, or the simpler one, is that when you move from CeFi to DeFi, well, you take, let's say, matching engines and back office that happen on exchanges, and you move to smart contracts on chain. Okay, but this is 2022, so we already know that it's kind of okay. We kind of figured that piece out. Okay, instead of everything happening like on like the exchanges, kind of like there is a chain, nobody controls it. There are smart, you interact with that does everything. So that's change number 1, but we kind of wrapped our head around it. The second one is that in traditional finance, you have like trade flows and price feeds, etc. While in DeFi, you have transactions propagating around in the peer-to-peer network and blocks propagating around, right? So it's not as obvious, but if you can think about it, that in DeFi, you have nodes and you have validators, they create a network, and transactions kind of like propagate among them, as do blocks. Okay, so a new block is created, everybody send it to those they know, and eventually it reaches everyone. And it has somewhat of a flow to it, right? Where like, there are constantly more transactions being added to it. So people talk about the mempool, transactions that haven't been mined yet are waiting, but there isn't really a thing as the mempool. It's very subjective. At any given time, slightly different than me, which I know slightly different than somebody else. And every second, dozens or hundreds, depending on which chain, like of new transactions kind of like come in. And kind of like, so even if we think, while thinking you already know something new and I know something else, so it's kind of that kind of. So this is not as obvious, but okay, it's 2022. We know there are transaction blocks propagating around. But the third property of DeFi, which I think we're just now discovering, is that CeFi is point to point. That's its network model, while DeFi is peer to peer. Okay, so in traditional finance, if you want to be a competitive actor, you need to be connected to New York, Chicago, London, Amsterdam, Hong Kong, Shanghai. That's basically it. Okay, these are the points which you need to be either co-locating or very close to them. This is where all the activity happens.
Right.
In DeFi, it's peer to peer. If you want to be competitive, you need to see trade transaction other people are making, blocks of people on multiple chains, but there is no single point to connect to, right? It's kind of a new transaction, somebody selling 1,000 ETH on Uniswap. Okay, this is going to change price everywhere, even in CeFi. This could come from Australia or Europe or the US or Asia, wherever. And it's coming from everywhere out there, and you have no way to actually connect with everyone. There isn't a single point to connect to. Right. You need to be connected with everyone. And this is kind of like where Bloxroute comes in. Okay. We're Flash Boys for DeFi. We're kind of connecting everyone with everybody else. Okay. So we have a network of like 30 to 40 servers, which what they do is propagate information fast. Okay, they hear transaction and they broadcast it to everybody else. And they hear blocks and they propagate it to everybody else. And so by being already connected to all the mining pools on Ethereum and the validators on BSC and on Polygon and now expanding to Solana and being connected to all the other traders, we're becoming faster and faster, right? Like our infrastructure is fast, but we hear information from the source, right? It's not that a trader will send a transaction to somebody else and then it would hop to somebody else and you'll hear it 5 hops later.
Right.
We hear it directly because that other trader is connected to us. And so he sends it through us and it reaches everybody else super fast. So the more people who use us, the faster we become. And so we already jump-started that like 4 years ago or 3 years ago, we got that initial bootstrap phase. And at this point, we're faster than others because our infrastructure is fast. But as importantly, we're connected with everyone. So we have this network effect playing in our favor. And that's kind of like what we do. We send transaction and blocks and allow actors to see that. And the super cool thing is that, let's say you're a big market maker and you don't even touch DeFi. Okay, you only do CeFi. You're like market making on Coinbase and Binance.
Right.
You still need to see the transaction, the blocks and the prices, the Oracle transaction, everything happening on DeFi, because that's going to affect prices. These are the same assets. Okay, it's it's as if the price changed in a different. You need to see that. So everybody needs to see this ASAP, because if you're not, it's like you're using, instead of like a 10 gigabit link connected, on the cloud provider, you use like a modem from the 90s, just like all the funny, like 90 kilobit per second or something like that. So it's like, if you're not using us, you're behind. Okay, you're like a second behind. And I can even give
or more.
So or more. But if you're competitive, like if you tried to make it work really fast and be good at it, you're still behind. Like usually an order of order of magnitude of like a second or so. So a cool example, which might maybe help like the audience kind of like maybe kind of like get a good grip of the concept. Let's say you're trading on Ethereum. Okay. So you receive a block and you see an opportunity, right? An opportunity could be anything, arbitrage or liquidation, or just price really dropped. There was a liquidation for somebody else. This is the price. You call the bottom. This is where you buy, or, you call the top. This is where you sell. But if it takes you 600 milliseconds, okay, 0.6 seconds to hear that block, then during this time, in 4% of the cases, a new block was already mined by the time you saw that block. Okay, so you lost that opportunity before you even saw it. Nice. And if you see that and you create a transaction, you send it, and it needs to reach the validators or the miners or the pools, and it takes 600 to 800 milliseconds to reach them, then in total, 10% of the opportunities are close to you. By the time you see it and you create the transaction, it reaches, and your block was already mined somewhere. Prices have changed, opportunities are gone. Whatever it is that you tried to do, somebody else already did it, right? If this was the bottom, somebody else already bought it. If there was a liquidation or arbitrage or a peak, you missed it, because it's like you're playing a shooter with really bad latency. Okay, it's kind of like you see an opportunity, you shoot. In reality, somebody came here, he shot you, you're dead. He moved on. You just don't know, you're in the lag. In a second, you'll catch up with everyone and say, oh shit, I missed. But it's kind of like, that's the game. That's the DeFi game being played.
Right.
And that's kind of like where we come. So our job is to open up opportunities, remove this inefficiency of, oh, it takes me so long to see it. Oh, it takes me so long to act on it, and kind of like put everybody on the same field. Does that kind of make sense?
Totally makes sense. So, in order to help people get it even better, the value proposition is incredibly obvious, right? The how, to me, is fairly obvious. I just want to make sure that people listening and watching, it's obvious for them. The how is that you guys are directly connecting. This isn't like those of us who think we're clever setting up our own RPC server, right? And now look how close we are to everything. This is you're connecting to the people that are validating transactions or blocks, and you're getting that data immediately. And so the people that are connecting through you for their trading needs or whatever they're doing are getting the data much faster than anyone else is going to get that is not using it.
So yes, but let's expand. We have like 4 sources
Great.
of speed. So, but you're right on target. I just want to add.
Yeah, no, that's great.
So absolutely. So people who want to be competitive because they need, and again, this is all about subjectivity. So it's kind of like how far, like how much slower are you slower like than the rest of everyone? And if you're using like Alchemy or Infura, you're playing a different game. Like you're 3 seconds behind. Okay, like 25% of the cases, like the stuff that you see are stale already. But let's assume you run your own node, so you're fairly competitive and you spend that. We have 4 sources of speed. And again, we have, as I said, like we have a network of servers. Okay, so 30 or 40 all around the world. And the number one reason that we're fast is that we have good engineering. Okay, so we spend like quite a few years building this to be very optimize the topology to propagate, closely monitor like networking with congestion over the internet. So one is just like good engineering and topology. We have network observers, they're very fast. Okay, we receive something and we send it very fast from end to end. So that's point number 1. Point number 2 is what we just both discussed. It is we're directly connected. So we're directly connected to those who produce blocks. These are validators or miners or pools, depending on the chain. And we're directly connected to this. So when they publish it, they don't need to go, they send it to somebody who send it to somebody and send it to somebody, and then it reaches your node. They send it to us and we broadcast it to everybody who are connected to us. Okay, so we're kind of like, we're the fastest way to get it. And so, and that has a few cool properties. It's also good for everybody else. Okay, so like if we make half of the network fast, then everybody else not connected to us also get faster because everybody else are faster. So they hear it from their neighbor, not directly. So it's kind of like, it's a good thing. Like it's a common good kind of thing. It helps everyone that we exist.
Sure.
But cause number 2 is basically we hear it directly from the source. And the source is not only for blocks. A lot of people really care about transaction, which didn't happen yet. So you can't imagine that, Jump Trading and Jane Street and Flow Traders and GSR and all the big traders, they're not willing to connect to one another to play nicely, right? They're competitive. They're each trying to hear the other and for others to hear that. But us being an infrastructure, we're connected with everyone and others are interested, like in this, I don't know, Jane Street want their transaction to go very fast to everybody else out there. And so we're connected to everyone and you can hear transactions and blocks from validators, from projects, from oracles, from traders, etc. And they broadcast very, very fast. So that's our second one, like just we hear it from the source, not after, 50 milliseconds later or something after you did like 3 hops or something.
Right.
The third piece, which is kind of cool, is very blockchain specific. If we talked earlier, there are blocks and transactions. The way blockchains work is that people make transactions. These transactions kind of like propagate. And then a block of the mine transaction propagate too. But if you think of our service kind of like a beacon, okay, like we said, oh, here are new transactions, here are new transactions. And we keep everybody in sync about unmined transaction, the transaction that didn't happen yet. Then when a new block is mined and it contains, let's say, transaction 5, 37, 105, etc., then on the wire in our infrastructure, we don't actually need to send the entire block. We just send metadata. We say, here's the header, and it includes transaction 537, 103, 406, etc. We send that much, much smaller piece of data to everybody, reconstruct at the edges. Okay, so our clients don't get, a representative, they actually get the full block, but we reconstruct it because we just said we already propagated these transactions. And our customers get the full block without us actually needing to send the full block in this money time, in this like the critical time of block propagation. At that point, we just send the metadata. The transactions themselves were already propagated to everybody else. So that's like our third piece. It's very blockchain specific, something that we can do. And we can compress the block by a factor of 100 by doing just that. And the last piece is what's streaming, cut-through routing. Basically, if we receive information then we already send it on the other side as we receive it. So by the time we finish receiving, let's say the block, we already sent everything else through the other end.
Got it.
So unlike the peer-to-peer network, which is great and robust and very important, but then somebody start receiving, finish receiving, then start sending, finish sending, then the other side so that's very slow. We receive it on one hand, already sent it on the other hand. By the time we receive the last byte, all the other bytes were already sent. We just need to send that, and it adds more to the speed. And these are the 4 sources of our speed.
That's awesome. That's really good to see and know. So a couple of things that dawned on me when you were talking earlier, that whole idea that some of the larger trading firms don't necessarily want people to know what they're doing. The interesting dynamic there that I think you were getting to in some way is that the interesting thing about doing all of this in DeFi is that, yeah, you don't want people to know what you're doing beforehand, but ultimately you need them to know that you did it in order for your transaction to actually have an impact, right? And so,
Right.
and for you to get what you were trying to get out of it. So it's a very interesting dynamic I had never thought of before until I had this conversation with you. So that's it.
So let's it actually is very relevant to something else that we're doing. So you're right on the money, right? It's exactly that.
Right.
So our value proposition is not low latency. Our value proposition is connectivity. So another thing that we offer is private transactions. Basically, a lot of actors come and say, we don't care about speed that much, but every time I touch DeFi, I get front run. But every time I send a transaction and I'm making a big buy or a big sell, something like that, somebody gets ahead of me and buys before I buy, and I get screwed over. So we leverage the fact that we're connected to all the validators and all the miners and all the pools, etc. And we can say, send us the transaction. We don't broadcast it to everybody else. We give it just to the validators and the miners and the pools. They don't broadcast it. They only add it to the block, assuming you pay the fee and whatnot, etc. And that transaction is only broadcast within a block. And so avoiding the whole world of MEV, the dark forest of other front running and back running, etc. And we actually came with this, we're very friendly with the Flashbot project, which their job is trying to reduce MEV, etc. We came up with this early on, then they came up with a very similar product after us. And we actually have some customers of ours that used us for a paid service, moved to using Flashbot, which operate in some cases for free. And then they came back to using us because they'd rather pay us and get private transaction, but fast. So they want to execute, they want to make sure the transaction happens in the next block versus getting it for free, but it might not be the next block. Maybe it will be the next block, but they're missing opportunity.
Wow.
And so for them, it was I'd rather, you can see the fees they're paying. Marketing is volatile. They're making trades and they could pay tens or hundreds or something, thousands of dollars in fees because they want a trade to go in, right? You hold ETH, price of ETH is crashing. It's I have $10 million of ETH and I want to send it now. I don't care if it costs $100, $1,000, $10, now. Press it, it's like fat or sweaty palm, just get me out of here. Which brings me to another cool thing. So that's a thing that we saw that traders care about speed and privacy combined, which is something like that we offer. And specifically, we're also, as I mentioned, working under Polygon and BSC. And what we see there, more than we see in Ethereum, but it's also true in Ethereum, again, volatile market, everything is crashing. You just want to sell, or it price is moving. It's wait, okay, this is it. Okay, now get in, buy now. I don't care about anything. Just buy now, make it happen. But the network is so congested that everybody are active and the transaction doesn't get to the validators. Right. It just dropped along the way among the nodes. There's just a storm of transaction going on. But because we're directly connected to everyone, you give it to us and it reaches the pools. It reaches the validator. So there is a lot of, especially for institutional, this is very reliable. So it might cost you to make the transaction more, etc. If you pay us and use or pay us for a subscription, etc. But when you send the transaction, it will reach them. And you kind of like count the pennies and whatnot until that moment where you kind
And
of
you have to get the
I
hell
just
out.
want to sell.
Yeah.
Okay, we're in the car market, like in the bull market. I just like here's a new token, right? Today, like let's say OP, right? Like like I just want to buy the damn thing. I don't care. Like, get it in and like no, your transaction like that.
You
That's
can't.
and you have zero visibility to what's going on. Even we have very limited. Like it's very hard to see in real time. Because you send the transaction, did it go through? Where it's out of the block, like did it get to the miners and the validators, but it wasn't mined yet? Will it be mined? Was it dropped along the way? And you have no idea, like, should I make another one? You
Right.
make another one. Now it's waiting on the previous one. Okay. So it's kind of, what you have to go and change the nuts. So they're kind of like, it's like, so if this is your bread and butter, you're like a shadowy super coder, right? This is like you're an MEV, anon, like this is, then you're fine. Okay. Like, you know what you're doing. You have a bot doing exactly what's supposed to, increase the fee significantly, use the same non, resubmit it a bunch of times. But generally speaking, especially for mass market, you have no idea. You not only don't you know, not only your transaction doesn't go through, you also don't know, will it go through or not? Why did it go through? Like you're clueless.
Yeah.
And this is where our is kind of like, okay, use our subscription and your transaction will go through. You still have to pay fees. It's not like, well, you won't, but it won't, drop somewhere in the middle with you have no idea. How do you resubmit it? How do you like all of that? So
Right.
these are kind of like the stuff that we offer to people because we have at the end of the day, we have connectivity.
Right. Yeah. And so the data's coming back and forth. So there's a lot to unpack and all that. First of all, the fact that you guys are offering MEV protection, like, out of the box, the holy grail of institutional all traders, but
Yes.
especially anybody doing anything sizable. So that's pretty amazing. Um, when when a customer is working with you, are are they working with you? Are they developing and integrating your systems into their systems? Are you providing a UI to them? Um, they're
Excellent
not
question.
executing trades through the standard dexes in the world, right? I mean, how
So,
does
so
that
you have these. This is a great question. We have kind of like depending on we have a few ways for people to use it. Also depending on the type of the client and what they really, etc. So we have these three main ways you could use us. Okay, mass market. If you're not like you don't have a bot, you don't have an application, just a trader, but kind of like you want to leverage us, you can go and you can go to DexGuard, which is a new service that we launched recently, and basically you add us as an RPC. The transaction would go through our systems, and it will be like you get private. You won't get run. You're safe from MEV. And that's just like very mass market. You don't need to be very smart about everything that you do, etc. Just connect to us and use that, and that's it. So that's one thing. To our bread and butter customers, okay, the more sophisticated traders who are doing like more than that, we have two ways for them to use us. Those who are already running a node, okay, and they want to continue to run a node, then they can connect to what we call a gateway. Okay, the gateway pretend to be another peer. So their node is already connected to a bunch of peers in the network. Gotta go to the config file, add us as another trusted node, and it would connect to us, and it would be just like any other node. Only our node will tell your node about everything fast, everything. Like it will be like between 95 or 90, depending. Like in Ethereum, like 90%, on BSC, 99.9% of the stuff, like we'll tell you about it fast. And where was I? So you could use that. And for those very like MEV searchers and those who really care about literally every millisecond, then you could actually, instead of listening to the node, you could listen to the gateway. That's actually the fastest way. So you even save the time of that transaction going through the node and kind of like make it like for the node process and tell you about it. So we even remove that. You can hear it directly from the gateway.
nice?
The third way, we have a cloud API. Okay, so a lot of traders say like, I don't really need to run a node. Just give me a stream of all the transactions. Give me a stream of all the blocks. directly to my application. Okay. I process it. I do whatever trading magic that I want, whatever market making. But I don't want to run a node. It's a hurdle. It's a headache. I don't benefit much from it. I don't care about it. And I just have to pay sometimes a DevOps guy just to make it run all the time and solve problems around it. So it kind of just save the need to do that, both the cost of running a node, not let alone, and just using our cloud API to get streams of blocks and transactions, both upstream and downstream. So you can send your transaction, and that can like save you all that need. And for those who care about speed, but they're not front running, back running, all the devious stuff that like any searcher might be doing, etc., who then care, like they really want the perfect granularity. Like if it's 1 millisecond faster, then it's worth all the money in the world to kind of like buy that. That is, I don't know, 1 millisecond slower. That's like that order of magnitude. It's
Right.
very, 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 like, it's very close and very compact. And that's really based on your need. So it's kind of like, depending on what kind of trader you are, generally speaking, using our cloud API is way faster than using your node, and almost the fastest way that you could be using us. And so when we talk about integration is very, very simple. Like we made it sure from the beginning. You don't integrate with us because there's no need. If you run a node, just like, oh, add it to your config file, and that's it. We pretend to be a node. If these are feeds, you just say, oh, here's the filter. Here are the transactions which I care about or don't care about. Here are the blocks. Here are the stuff, and get these. And so this is kind of like, it's not really integration. It's really, here's the API, here's the website, here's how you use that. It's also, here's the script to measure how much faster you are with us versus without us, which we offer. And another cool service that we're not offering yet, but we're about to start offering, is to offer some more complex data accompanying the blocks. So like for some
This is my
customers,
next question.
you get the block, but maybe you want the simulation or the result of the event happening from each one of the transactions, or only transactions of Uniswap or something like that. So we're now, again, this is something very new. We haven't like released it yet. It's kind of like we're about to and going to release it, which is basically provide this additional data to me as a trader, because I don't want to run a node and figure it out all by myself. But like, give me the events, tell me what's happening, and fast, and I could use that and act on it, and kind of like, that's what I need. So that's kind of like our next kind of like.
That was my next question, because of the next thing I wanted, because my next question was, wait, is this also a data service? Because if I'm an active institutional trader or large trader, I may want to programmatically say, let me know when token pair X is seeing X% increase in volume in a given X amount of time, so I can act on that, right? Or, and is that, is that where you guys are going, that I can actually utilize this back data?
So again, we're just expanding into that as well, but I talked about our technical network effect, where the more people who use us, the faster we become and the more value everybody are getting. So that kind of be itself. Right. But we actually have a second network effect, which is a business network effect. Okay. The more projects and chains that we support, the more value our customers get. Okay. So this is kind of like basically out of it, right? We started with Ethereum, sure, DeFi started. And then our customers said, like, I'm also trading on BSC. Could you also connect? It's like, okay, there's a business need. We connected with the BSC and support that as well. Then the Polygon Foundation came to us actually, and we struck a deal to help them propagate blocks fast among Polygon validators, etc. So that direction kind of like makes a lot of sense. But there's also, it's a two-sided market, okay? Like Uber has passengers and drivers, and Visa has like customers and retail. There's also there's also the other side. The more traders that we have and the more activity we have, the more projects all of a sudden want to be working with us, okay? Because they want easy access to our customers. So our customers are routing nowadays $1.5 billion of trade through us, okay? That's a lot of money. I think that's like 40% of all of DeFi volume in total. Okay, that's really, really big money. And so for example, that one of the services that we're about to offer, we connected with some actors in the Solana ecosystem, specifically Serum, but also a few others. And they said like, Serum is a great project and it has tons of liquidity, but for many of the traders, it's not very accessible because it's on Solana and they don't have a Solana setup. They're not listening. The computation model is different. The way you create transaction is different. The way you sign them is different. Everything around it is different. So they don't have a setup. So even if there are opportunities, they're not using it and they're not utilizing it.
Right.
So because we have this access, then project said, oh, Bloxroute, can you offer a supercharged API, making it, almost like a centralized exchange? Here's the API to use in order to trade on Serum or in order to trade on Solana. And we're providing that to our customers. So we have like Solana services, we call it internally. Basically, the ability to interact on Solana without actually running a node. Here are the feeds. Here you're getting all the smart stuff. Here's how you use it. Here's how you send the transaction. And give me the order book. Give me these details. Like all the API that you expect from a centralized thing, same, but for Serum. Okay, so on Solana. And another thing, we're kind of like talking and looking into feeds of like very fast feeds. Oh, here are the prices. Here are how stuff changed, etc. And so going back to your question, and that's something that we're offering to our customers. And it makes sense for us because we have a business interest into that. So we have our customers, right? Our traders, all that, but also projects, and we work with both, right? There's not like the traders pay for everything or the project pay for everything. They're kind of like, they're paying half or then they're paying half or something like that.
Right.
And so the Serum deal makes a lot of sense for us. Okay. It's kind of like, okay, we leverage our connectivity. Again, it's all coming down because all the big ones are using us. Also very major traditional finance actors who are not yet using Serum and Solana or DeFi. We're like, okay, we understand the value proposition. We're committing to using these APIs. And so they're coming in also in order to leverage the services that we offer. So we have that, okay, which is kind of like along the lines that you were thinking. What are we offering? So API for Serum and Solana, that's something we're just now releasing to our early adopters. These are customers we have for a long time, getting feedback. It's already working, but some stuff will work as fast as we expect. Like we're going to have glitches and it's not ready yet for everybody to use, but it's good enough at this point for some to start using. So that's one thing. And this additional data that we're thinking about, like for Uniswap, that we're about like to release this product as well. And if there are other streams of data that people are interested, so if the market tells us, okay, our customers come and say, I want this and I want that, and we can go to talk to the providers that has that, right? Because like our bread and butter is connectivity, but we can collaborate with others and, some revenue share model or something like that, and help them reach all the users. It's kind of like a win-win. Let's help them facilitate, because a lot of the time for the data providers, etc., they're very institutional focused. It's going to be very hard for them to have that available and charge for like smaller actors, etc. And we're kind of like, well, we'll act as the aggregator. We'll take that. We'll send it as fast as humanly possible. Probably the institution will use us too because they'll get it faster. Okay, so it's kind of like, so we can do that. So we can leverage the value of others, the feeds or the product that they're providing, and give access to our customers to that. And that seems to make a lot of sense for us.
Yeah, well, I could see you being for like a project like Nansen, that you could be the one, you could be providing them the access to the channels so that they get the data faster, and then be the interface or be the connectivity for the customers that are buying Nansen services, so that the data is coming in at a much more rapid pace, then allowing for people to build on their APIs. And you are just providing that infrastructure between. That's interesting.
Yeah,
Very
yeah.
interesting. Okay, I got to tell you, man, I'm like, I've got 400 use cases running through my head right now, and I can't even. I mean, do you guys have a map of this? Like, do you have a visual?
Well, you can go to Bloxroute.com and it kind of gives you like a starting point. But we're having this conversation, and you kind of go, oh, here are all the stuff and all the implications of what we do, and it's kind of like a lot, right? I started with
the eternal mind map.
Yeah, but it's kind of like there's 3 properties which are different from CeFi and DeFi. But it's kind of like, and I said, we're just starting to wrap our head around the fact that, okay, DeFi is peer-to-peer compared to TradFi, which is point-to-point. And the implication of that, we're just, and I'm saying like, I'm the guy who's doing this for like every day for the past like 4 or 5 years or something. And I feel like, okay, I'm still understanding better. And I'm kind of like, oh, well, here are the implications of this, and here are the implications of that. And MEV came to the world in its current form. And what does that mean? And PBS, which is like proposer builder separation, which is the idea anybody can, validators create a block, but they don't know what it is. Everybody could kind of like try to make the best block. And what are the implications of that? And so there is really a lot to just like wrap your head around. And, I'm not even talking about, multi-chain liquidity or cross-chain liquidity. Can I act here and then act there and then come back? So there's tons of stuff to think about. And I admit I have not fully, this is crypto in a nutshell, right? Everybody are running full speed in all directions and you have zero chance of catching up. And even just like you spend a week, digging into something just to understand whether it's real or not. I mean, it has value or not. In fact, well, you spend a week, no, it's not going to work, but you just spend a week just trying to figure it out, right? So everybody are running in all directions and kind of like, screaming like as fast as they can. And we're all trying to, staying close to the edge, but the edge is constantly moving. And there are like 7,000 different edges.
Yeah.
So,
and I gotta believe it's gotta be incredibly hard in your position. Like I would be the worst nightmare in your job because every day I would have something else I wanted to build. And you want to keep it at this core mission of the connection, right? And providing the speed, but it's got to be very difficult not to say, well, we could.
well, what about that?
Yeah.
I'm not even talking about, okay, this is only DeFi. Now talk about other verticals. Okay, think metaverse, think gaming, think Web3. Here's the thing, we're super interesting, by the way. But again, here's another thing that we don't have time to work on right now. If you're, let's say a blockchain-based gaming, okay, you take an item, you take a spell, you kind of like cast a spell on it, and you create a transaction. That transaction need to hit the chain, and then result come back, and voila, you cast the spell. But even if the blockchain itself is so fast, it's instantaneous, right? You still like cast a spell, transaction goes 1, 2, hit the chain, come back. Okay, it takes like 2.5, 3 seconds to make it. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, this is your user experience.
Right.
Now you can think about us. We're like internet middle boxes for those out there who are familiar. Like, we hear it, we send the transaction to the chain fast, we hear about it fast, kind of like tell you about it fast. So it's like, cast a spell, that's it. Okay, right? 150 seconds one way, 150 back. In total, 0.3 seconds compared to like 3 seconds. So we're in DeFi, it's really money. In other vertical, it's user experience, and they need us the same way. Everything that needs to touch a blockchain, it needs to be speedy in order to be valuable or pleasant or provide the experience. Needs us to help with the process, or I don't know if it needs us, but it would be better and benefit from kind of like using the infrastructure that we're doing. So yes, it's like, oh, here are a million stuff that we want to do. And I think the hardest part is like, okay, here are the lowest hanging fruits, which we can do right now, and they're very valuable. And yes, here are 5 different apples that we want to do. But, by the end of 2021, we were 16 people. Okay. Like,
wow.
Now we're 30, but again, like we need to be like 100.
I was going to say, that's like, I can't believe you're doing all this with that number. That's astounding.
Like, it's like we were doing all this thing and DeFi and providing value and getting customer and moving, like we moved from making no money. We close a year like with a 7 million ARR or so.
Nice.
And we don't have marketing we didn't have marketing or customer success or sales or any. Basically, we built the tech and people came to us because they heard it from somebody else.
Yeah.
But now there was like we closed a big round led by SoftBank, and we have like great
you've got some great
we have really great backers. We have Dragonfly who led the previous round, and then this one we have Flybridge, really good, really good partners.
They better invest just so they can get first row access. Just kidding.
But not like what I told them is kind of like, we have all of that, but like we did with 16 people. If we were already 50 people or 100 people, we would have done better. Yeah. So our current real like challenge, okay, scaling up. We need to bring more people, and we built an entire new business function to provide more support for our customers, to understand them better, to help them get set up better. We got tons of feedback about our propagation and value in BFC, and now we're like our service is so much better because we heard from them. And earlier you tell like, who has the bandwidth to listen to the customer? Like we can only do that much. So it really is about we do something, we do it very well, and I kind of go, here are the additional stuff we want to,
Right.
and what it. I think the best term for this, it's like ruthless prioritization. It's kind of like there are a million stuff you really want to do, and you come with a knife and you cut like, here's what we can do. Everything else you throw, like we can't do it now. We'll do
Right.
it next year, okay, or next version or something.
Have you
Here's what we do.
have you guys thought about like going the developer network route where you've got a bunch of developers that are building applications as partners for your space and that are um providing a marketplace for your customers in some way?
So we have the difference between us, let's say, than something like what's it called? Blank on the name of the indexing. The graph. Okay.
Right.
The graph, kind of like everybody could take the graph and run an indexer and kind of like it's something that everybody could be doing and understand how it works and kind of like expand onto that. For somebody to work and expand to what we're doing and etc., you actually need to be very hands-on, learn what we do for real. It's you need a team to do anything here. It's not like, well, just add something, kind of like add another piece to that. It's not, at least in the current architecture and the way it works, right? You could imagine a world where like, okay, adding feeds becomes simpler, easier, something like that. But we're not there yet at all. The current state is kind of, if you really need to understand, oh, here are all the components, here are how they work. Here's how it goes through the cloud API versus through the gateways, and how it goes upstream and downstream and blah, 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 blah. So it's kind of like, it would be great, but we're not there yet because you really need to understand. Let's say I couldn't do it. I understand the high level, but like I can't do it despite being like having years of experience as a software engineer and being in crypto since forever. But it's kind of, I'm not at this point, very familiar with what the code base looked like. And I couldn't do anything. I don't have enough time. I don't have the bandwidth. I envy co-founders, I know CEOs who can do everything and also be very, touch the code while
Hands-on doing it. Yeah.
I get like you could
That ship has sailed.
similar to your question earlier, I can only do that much, right? There are only so many hours in the day. You can only do that much. And if I did that, then I'll have to drop other balls. So again, ruthless prioritization. You choose pick the highest value balls, do them, and sadly watch other balls fall like, oh, we could have done this and I could have accept that this is reality. And this is like, it's very easy. It's kind of like, okay, this is nothing is perfect. You only can do more and more and then kind of like get better, but like you won't ever be perfect and you won't ever make it all. And not everybody are going to be happy with you. And that's just the reality of life.
Yeah. I'm assuming throughout this conversation that your customers are not going, your customers are fairly large scale currently in terms of their trading volumes, that kind of thing. This is not a product that, kind of below whale would necessarily.
No, so we really have like a really big range of users. Definitely the high end, like the winter mutes of the world, etc.
Right.
Like really big one for sure. But also, MEV anon that are doing stuff, and they're not that good. They don't have like millions of dollars to spend or whatnot, or even tens of thousands or that. But they're kind of like, they're leveraging what we do and they're kind of like medium sized. And we also, as I mentioned, we also have two things. The mass market, like DexGuard, which we recently released, and kind of like, okay, anybody should be able to send a transaction, avoid front running, avoid back running, and utilize our connectivity. But also working about like collaboration with other projects, so they can offer it to their customers,
Nice.
etc. But we're very much looking always to both in the, and again, there are so many opportunities. So in the world of NFTs, like the fact NFTs current architecture suck, and basically everybody wastes tons of the money is being spent on the minting process, which doesn't go to the creator, it doesn't go to the user, it's just being it's for the greater good of the chain. But like,
Right.
I'm not sure you really want to do that. And so you could imagine ways that leveraging connectivity and kind of like making sure that the design is slightly different and allows everybody to participate in a slightly way, not fair way, but a more inclusive way. So everybody can participate, but maybe different portions or rate. But so these are other stuff. But again, we're not strongly focused on that. We want to do that as well, but
Yeah.
we're trying to do all. We do care about mass market because we do think like everybody should be able to send their transaction fast and get execute fast and not avoid the dangers of, the MEV dark forest.
But it's obviously limiting, right? I mean, then you're dealing with customer support and you're dealing with billing and you're dealing with, so
Yeah,
it makes it a little more difficult.
so this is why we're also going the RPC route and providing like, okay, we partner with
Simpler
RPC
connection.
providers, and
Yeah.
we have like good conversation with plenty of them. Some of them are. So we have like miners invested in us, we have traders invested in us, we have RPC like companies invested in us. So we kind of it helps aligns everybody's incentive to kind of like, okay, let's make this work, and everybody try to
That's awesome.
kind of like get the most out of it, and kind of we're not competing, we're on the same side. So okay, how do we build a really good product that everybody benefits from?
That makes sense. So I ask a question of people in the AI space. What happens when the sales and marketing AI is selling to the buyer AI? And so I'm almost feeling like there's that potentially to happen for what you're doing, right? If you get enough of the market, you become DeFi at a pretty significant scale. And I also wonder, as an aside, how many of the interfaces we now have we need. And then secondarily, is there a change in the advantage you provide to people if you have everybody using you?
Right. So that's an excellent question. So first of all, I do want to emphasize all our users, they use us, but they also use a peer-to-peer. It's kind of like we use
Mhm.
that. It would go faster through us. It would reach through us faster and do like all of that. So I don't want them to trust us. If we go away, everything continue to operate. Not as fast. So everybody are now it's like everybody moves. It's like the internet is very congested. Okay. Which happens every so often. So everybody's internet is now slower. So everybody are at a disadvantage, but we're not a single point of failure that if we go away, then nothing works. Okay. If we go away, everything continue to work.
Right.
So that's an important like things to
Absolutely
point out.
get that.
I do agree. Like it's early on, we start by being like an advantage. Very soon, we become like, okay, a thing that you need. Like we're a competitive necessity. It's kind of like
Right.
you want to, but that's more true for the large actors. And the large actors are like they have numerous like competitive necessities. They run really big server farms or really big like operation, and they spend like the amount they would pay. Like we're a small business compared to I don't just throwing out there like Jump easily have 100 people in crypto like building Sapi journey and stuff. Like we're like 5 times or 3 times more than all our team like is doing, etc. So there are other stuff we're a small piece compared to that. And so like even if so many people are using us, etc., it doesn't make us an issue. I do have a vision when nobody cares about us when you make $7 million per year and like people start noticing it's $70 million AR. But when we'll go 700 million AR, at that point people are like, wait, that's more than Cloudflare is making.
Right.
So I've actually been in touch with Cloudflare and NS1 and other like networking companies. So eventually I see this as being integrated or acquired or partitioned, or I'm not sure what the verb is, into the network infrastructure of the world.
Internet.
Okay.
Nice.
So our Bloxroute is a BDN, a blockchain distribution network. Okay. It's a wing to CDN, the content distribution network, which is
Very
like
nice.
from the 90s. Akamai was the first company. I love that company.
Yeah, me too.
And I know Jonathan Zelig, who's one of the co-founders, and kind of they have a super interesting story. But the TLDR, back in the day, before midnight, before 94 or something like that, when you went to a website and there was a picture, you actually went all the way and brought that picture from the other side of the world. And that's a very slow process to get that. So you kind of like, they send a piece and you say, oh, I got the first piece, and they send the second piece and you say, okay, I got that, etc. And CDN, according to Akamai, what they did was say like, oh, I'll put servers everywhere in the world. Currently, like in your home, everybody listening to this, you have CDN servers sitting close to you. And every time you go somewhere, you go to a website, you go to Twitter, all the pictures out there, you say, oh, I need this picture, and it will take it from the server, which is like 5 miles from your house. Okay. It's
Right.
very close to you. Okay. And this is now the architecture of the internet. Okay. So I definitely see us as slowly becoming part of the general internet infrastructure as DeFi becomes bigger, as crypto becomes bigger, etc.
Interesting.
What do we do? Yeah, we're going to be part of the infrastructure, and we're probably going to be collaborating or working with all the existing networking infrastructure companies. Okay, whether they are the Google and Amazon and Akamai and Cloudflare, or you could think like gaming companies actually spend quite a lot of effort in kind of like, okay, propagation of data pass for real time, like you pay like, who was it? There's a company doing it for Frontnight, okay, which kind of like allowed, I think they allowed the India team to reach the finals for the first time ever because they weren't at a disadvantage because of the latency in India
Very nice.
versus elsewhere. I'm blanking, not Sub-Zero, blanking on the name for some reason. So these are the kind of companies that we're probably going to collaborate in the future with. So it's kind of like, we're going to be just part of the networking, like the internet infrastructure. It needs to be done. And like, that's how I kind of like envision it.
That's an awesome vision, and I'm sure your investors love that vision. That's actually pretty amazing when you think about it. Wow. Okay. Let me make sure I took a ton of notes while we were talking, but I think it's kind of irrelevant because we've covered so much. Is there, is there anything else that you think that we should talk about what you're offering to the world yet?
No, the problem is there's so much. So at some point it becomes like too like I don't want to add. If anything, I would cut stuff out because like you could only talk about that much in an episode. And you said like, oh, there are so many stuff. Yes, there are so many stuff. And I have a tendency to talk really fast when I'm getting excited. So
It's obvious you
there's
love
a
what
lot
you
of
do.
data. There's a lot to unpack. And I don't think like we covered more than needed. I think we can always do another episode to cover something else.
We could do another 5 episodes to cover just the things I want to do with it. So that's awesome. Okay. So I ask this question of everybody that comes on the show. Who or what person or project, usually it's a person, is someone in the crypto DeFi world that you have a tremendous amount of respect for, or that you have learned a great deal from, that you think is really important to the future of what we're doing, or was really important?
So I don't have, first of all, I don't have a ready answer. So I would point out, and it's very easy to kind of like point out Vitalik because he's a
Sure.
really nice guy and whatnot, etc. I think one thing that we would benefit as an industry, and it's very hard, is not to shill what you're doing too much and point out your weaknesses and admit to them and point out where others are doing something really great. So like you can like Vitalik for all sorts of stuff. Nice guy, by the way. But I want to point that out, like something I look like up to, like the ability to say and kind of go, we tried to do this didn't work well and we messed it up. And look at another project who is competing with you and say they're very smart about what they're doing at X, Y, and Z, etc. We should learn from them, etc. So there's also, it's like it requires confidence into what you do. You don't need to be, guns blazing all the time. Kind of like, no, I'm better than them. So that's something I think we as an industry should all like learn from and take at least a bit of that into what we do, and kind of like some honesty, some, I don't know if you call it openness or acceptance. Like other people are doing stuff. They're competing with what you do. It doesn't diminish from what you're doing.
That's right.
You could, if they do something well, you should commend them. And you like, if they're doing something bad, you should point it out, but very kind of like not, like try to make the most points out of pointing. Just like try to be a better person, try to do the right thing, try to be open. And if you could do that, and if we could all do that, crypto would be better.
That's awesome. And frankly, I look, I've worked in tech and startups for 26 years, 27 years. And I will say that of all the spaces I've been in, from the web and 96 on to some healthcare to some travel, but all are relevant to tech. I believe that the folks in crypto are more likely to examine, self-examine, admit mistakes, critique each other, solve problems together, than anything I've ever seen in my life in business and tech and anything else. But I totally agree we need more of that. And I tweeted this last week after I came back from, or 2 weeks ago, after I came back from permissionless. I think we owe Do Kwon a huge debt of gratitude, because I think it reset kind of the arrogant switch.
There's something to that. Like, I think a lot of people would say, like, no, I'm not, like, I don't give gratitude. He owes me X amount of
Yeah,
dollars or whatever.
right. I said
No,
obviously relevant to the people
not
that got
going
hurt.
down that route. I'm not like, I don't
Yeah,
feel
yeah.
that like I'm actually in any position to judge, but I do agree with you. I was thinking that the bear market would be here, I don't know, 9 months ago. And then again, like everybody knew it was coming and decided, like, knowing the timing is the hard part. Like, if you've been into crypto for long enough, these comments like, okay, so I was, predicting the bear market way before I got the time wrong, but everybody knew this need, like, there's some correction and like, okay, let's reduce the heat and reduce like the flames and reduce the hopium and kind of like, okay, let's stay with stuff that work and try to build stuff that are important.
Yep.
And I really I like a lot of cool stuff about NFTs, but on the other hand, it's kind of like, well, here's a picture of an ape. Is it worth $3 million? And you could say, well, art is could worth any amount. And sure, but like, does somebody feel that really kind of like connect to him and kind of like that? So, and again, it's very easy to talk about the base, but it could be any of the others. So my feeling is that, like, there are a ton of really cool opportunities to do real stuff that people would actually value. And it's very hard, but we should try to focus on doing more of that and less of, wait, I can do a project where between now and a week and I could make $10 million. Just like, I don't know, shielding it and say something about it and disappear with it. And there's a lesson there, I think, somewhere.
Well, and like I said, I think that coming out of the collapse of that, and the reason I say that about Do Kwon and Terra and the whole thing is, what I saw coming out of that was um, a lot less arrogance,
I agree.
a lot less people willing to kind of be that way. And to me, I think that speaks to what you were saying, which is, let's look at each other, let's help each other. We have so far to go. This idea that somehow you need to kill your competitors local
Yeah.
here in this
Yeah.
ecosystem is just silly. Because
I,
if you are smart and responsible and build well, you got a long ways to go. So,
I, I totally agree. I
yeah,
totally agree with that.
absolutely.
And yeah, and nobody would accuse me from being the world's most humble guy. But yeah,
Me,
but it's kind of okay. Like, but we should try to be more humble and less arrogant pricks.
absolutely. Oh, we'll just close on that note. That's awesome. Um, all right, thank you so much. This was like eye-opening. I'm really, I love your passion and excitement. I can see that your team must love it as well. As long as you're not bringing in new ideas every day. So thank you so much for coming on and sharing with us. And I definitely want to have you back on, probably within the year when you're acquired and when you're growing, and there's more news for what you're doing. But I can't wait to sit and digest all of the potential for some of the things I'm doing with what you're doing at Bloxroute.
Awesome, Brad. This was super fun, and I'm looking forward to the next time.
Awesome. Thanks, man.